This is News Channel 8 at 4 on your side.
We understand this is just the beginning. There's a lot more that's going to need to be done.
Governor DeSantis saying it all right there. And right now at 4, a new look at the mass destruction across Florida. Watch how quickly Fort Myers went underwater in this time-lapse video. Storm surge devastating the southwest region. And today is just the beginning of what will be a very long recovery. Good evening, I'm Keith Cate.
And I'm Stacy Scheibel. Thank you for joining us. Here is what we know right now. Millions of Floridians lost power in the storm, and crews are out right now working to get that power restored. Some airports will reopen this evening. Others are planning to reopen tomorrow. More on that coming up.
And not too long ago, President Biden said this could be the deadliest storm in Florida's history. We already know at least 8 people have died in Charlotte County. Many rescues are still underway at this very hour. And we have reporters all across Florida covering Ian's impact, both on the Bay Area, right here in the Tampa Bay area, and in Fort Myers, where Ian left flooded streets, destroyed homes, and widespread power outages. Just remarkable already seeing some of these images.
You know, we were afraid this was exactly what we were going to see. Do you remember talking about the boats yesterday?
I did. I said it was inevitable we were going to see them all come together like this.
It's the devastation left behind by a Category 4 hurricane. 8 on your sides, Jeff Patterson is in Fort Myers, and you've seen it with your own eyes today. How is it down there, Jeff?
It's unbelievable. Good evening, Stacy and Keith. We've been driving around quite a bit, and we're actually about 7 miles south of Fort Myers here in Lee County, and we are pretty close to where Sanibel Island is, where the bridge is, or was going over to Sanibel Island, because as we saw today, parts of that bridge have been destroyed. Lee County deputies not letting anyone over to Sanibel Island to drive over there right now. But we're at the Century 21 Mobile Home Park. This community has seen tornado and it has seen 4 hurricanes before, but nothing like this. You were just talking about the storm surge. I spoke to several residents here. Just about everybody left, but one man did stay. He said that the water got up to about shoulder level outside. It came up to about waist level inside of his mobile home. But just take a look at behind me. People are just now coming back and trying to pick up the pieces, but there's shards of aluminum and glass everywhere you see. There's actually fish that we've seen that have come up into the street here that have died in the middle of the street just because the storm surge came up so high, so fast. You can see down tree limbs and down trees everywhere. There's debris just about everywhere you look. And as we were driving here today, getting here was not easy. There are down power lines, there are down trees across the street. We actually saw several cases where people had gotten out on their own and were trying to hand saw trees to get them out of the way. Hand saw. They didn't even have chainsaws, just doing whatever they could to try to make the roadways passable here. There's several problems for this community, let alone the destruction that you're seeing here. There is very little cell phone service in the area. This spot that I'm standing in is one of the few places that I've been able to call out today. So there's no cell service. People don't have internet connection. They are basically blind right now. All the normal things that you associate with the lives that we currently lead have been kind of wiped away overnight. And I've spoken to several people who were here last night who tell me that the wind was incredible, just howling throughout the night for hours and hours. But it was that storm surge that devastated homes, and we're going to have more on that coming up at 5 and 6 o'clock, where you'll hear directly from some of their stories.
I know they're getting some of those temporary cell towers down there as quickly as possible. The governor talked about that earlier today, but we saw some of the devastation from the air at the top of the show where, I guess at marinas, anywhere you look, they've been leveled by this storm.
Stacy, I've seen boats, sailboats and power boats up on roads. There was actually a firehouse not too far from here where there were about 3 sailboats or vessels that had been washed up out of canals just because of that high storm surge and pushed up pretty close to where the fire station is. And we've just seen in boats in places you wouldn't imagine that they could be pushed to, but that's where they ended up. So you're right. Just driving around here, it is almost beyond comprehension, because it's not just one small area that we typically see in a hurricane. It goes on for miles and miles, and it's just like nothing I've ever seen.
And it's also, we need to point out here, people are involved in all of this. We see the damage, we see the destruction, and I've been with you, Jeff.
I might have lost you there, Keith. I think
we're talking about where the people go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's in and out, to be honest.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
I talked to several people. There was a shelter here there was a shelter near here where they evacuated to. That's where most of the people, at least in this community, except for a couple of people who stayed overnight, most of the people went to a shelter, thankfully.
Yeah, we'll let you go, Jeff. We know it's intermittent down there. Cell service, as you mentioned, I think the governor said 100 mobile, portable cell towers being established.
To help restore that, at least.
But a lot of people are trying to call, so it's still going to be difficult.
And you know what that reminds me of? Looking at that destruction, it looks like a tornado struck, but in this case, that tornado's path is going to be so widespread and so long-lasting. It's just unbelievable.
Well, we're going to see that drone video, and I think what you'll notice, which we often see, is this swath. It's almost like a lawnmower comes in and just goes in a path.
Wipes it all to one side.
So we'll see more of that, and you have some more video.
Yeah, a new video shows the extent of the damage that we're talking about, this specifically on Sanibel Island Causeway Bridge.
Now, here's some of that drone video taken today, and it shows some damage here, structural damage especially. A large section of the Sanibel Island Causeway just fell into the Gulf, caved in, cutting off access to the barrier land where about 6,300 people usually reside. Governor DeSantis saying today that they will rebuild.
We're committed to restoring the infrastructure as needed. That is not going to be an overnight task. That is going to be something that is going to require a lot of love and care. It's going to require a lot of resources, but we're going to do it because we understand how important it is.
They always rebuild and always rebuild better. We're told most of the residents were evacuated from Sanibel, but they are still doing rescues here. And check out what Ian did in Central Florida, Stacey.
Yeah, this is actually in downtown Orlando. Streets underwater, cars damaged. We're told some of those areas are seeing historic flooding. This is like a 500-year flood in spots.
And parents, we know you're probably eager to get the kids back to school. Most districts plan to reopen on Monday. We know the Pasco County told us today that they have sent out crews to check out any possible damage or flooding, and they are still on track to open on Monday as well. So something to be thinking about as we go forward. People can get back to their normal routines. And we also know that more than 2.5 million Florida households remain without power today.
Now, crews are staged all across the state to begin restoring that power. Our Jennifer Pignate joins us live from the Tampa News Center with an update on that.
Good afternoon, Keith and Stacey. Florida Power and Light just about an hour ago posted on Twitter saying it plans to deploy its drone later today to assess the damage along the West Coast. Right now, the safety of everyone, of course, is the top priority.
From the minute they could get in here, they've been in here working on being able to get people connected again. I've talked to two of the major CEOs for the telecom companies about their restoration services, and fortunately, some of their infrastructure has done okay. Our DEM is also putting the mobile cell phone towers to be able to help restore communications.
Talking about the efforts being done right now. Florida Power and Light has more than 1.2 million outages. Duke Energy an hour ago reported 682,000 customers were without power in Florida. Crews have restored power to 185,000 households so far, and TECO says there are about 255,000 outages at the moment. And during the governor's press conference, Florida Department of Emergency Director Kevin Guthrie said that the focus over the next 72 hours is to search for and to rescue those people and families in dire need. Crews will begin restoring power as soon as it is safe to do so, and of course we'll be keeping you up to date on that. Keith and Stacey.
All right, Jennifer Pignate in the Tampa Newsroom, thank you for that. It's just going to be a process for sure.
It sure is going to be a process. And Ian has left Florida and off the coast of Jacksonville now. It's escaped the state, not without leaving a lot of destruction behind. 8 on your sides, Rebecca Berry joins us now. You guys have worked around the clock. You've done a wonderful job with this. Tell us more on where Ian's headed now, sadly, for others.
Unfortunately, this is going to continue to be a big flood event for the Carolinas because now Ian's out over the open Atlantic. We're seeing higher than normal high tides right along the coastline there and some coastal flooding on the east coast of Florida. The St. Johns River is running about 4 to 6 feet above normal. Wow. And they had northeasterly winds approaching this because of the low pressure to the south of that, and that drove more water into the St. Johns River and all of their tributaries as well for days leading up to this, in addition to the higher than normal high tides because of the moon phase. So lots of flooding going on, and Ian is going to actually continue to intensify. So we are just not done with Ian yet in terms of intensification. We are, but the United States itself is not. And so it's still tropical storm Ian. It is just barely below hurricane strength with 70-mile-per-hour winds. It's moving to the north-northeast at 9 miles per hour right now, and so it's expected to re-intensify into a Category 1 hurricane and then make landfall in South Carolina. And so especially low-lying areas like Charleston, they're going to have issues with all of the flooding rain. And then once the system makes its way inland in the Carolinas, a lot of times they just kind of die out over those mountain ranges, and we see heavy flooding with these types of systems miles and miles inland. Almost an entire state inland will have some flooding, and that'll happen over the weekend. So that's what's going on with Ian. Locally, we're actually enjoying some cooler weather. We're done with the rain. It's still very breezy out there, but Ian has actually pulled down some cooler, drier air across our area upon its exit. Now, we don't have all of our sensors back up yet, so you are going to notice some missing temperatures and missing wind speeds over the next couple of days until they start to get electricity and internet and everything back connected. But we're giving you an overall picture of what the areas that we can see. We're in the mid to upper 70s in the afternoon, so it feels like fall out there. It's still pretty breezy. We've got 15 to 20 mile per hour winds out there right now with gusts in that 30 mile per hour range. And it's going to be actually a little cool tonight, which is great for those that are without power. I'll walk you through how long that's going to last coming up next.
Thanks, Rebecca. The Sarasota Bradenton Airport suffered a little damage yesterday in the hurricane. Take a look. Our crew actually saw this roof damage. Pieces of the ceiling scattered across the inside. The airport CEO says they took on a little flooding as well, but despite that, it's minor damage, and they're reopening to all flights tonight. Maybe not all flights, but I know some flights tonight, the rest tomorrow. Over in Pinellas County, no significant damage was reported at the St. Pete Clearwater International Airport. Terminals and parking lots are expected to reopen tomorrow morning there. Passengers, though, are asked to check in with the airlines directly for updated flight information.
And Tampa International Airport also announcing that it will resume operations tomorrow at 10 a.m. Melissa Marino joining us now live at the airport with the latest on the efforts to get everything back up and running there. I guess they flew out a lot of these planes, and now they have to fly them back in, the crews, the pilots, all of the things that go with making an airport operational. So tell us more about it, Melissa.
Well, that's exactly right. Good afternoon, Keith. They flew out every single plane, they tell us. So now, as you mentioned, it's working to get it back up and running. They also had to do damage assessments. Luckily, they tell us they suffered very minimal damage, so they are ready to open again tomorrow. But they want to warn passengers it is going to be extremely busy as they try to catch up. So I want to show you some video. I mentioned this is of the crews doing damage assessments today after the hurricane. We're told they inspected all the runways and taxiways for damage, standing water, and to make sure the airfield is safe. So far, they only really suffered roof leaks, they tell us, and they have hundreds of workers right now getting the airport back up and running. They will resume some cargo operations this evening at 7 p.m. and then passenger flights will take off tomorrow at 10 a.m. starting at 10. Now, back out here live, we're told over 1,000 flights so far have been canceled coming in and out of Tampa because of the storm, and that even includes some flights already tomorrow, over 100 flights. Again, they expect it to be very busy tomorrow. They want passengers to arrive 2 hours early at the minimum, and if you have any issues, contact your airline directly. Melissa Marino, 8 on your side.
It's going to be like a holiday out there with all these people trying to get back in all at once. And with the city of Tampa largely spared from major damage from the storm, the Bucs announced today they will play the Kansas City Chiefs at Ray J as scheduled this Sunday night. It's
going to be a big home game, too. Kickoff for Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. You can catch that game right here on News Channel 8, your official Bucs station.
And still to come, what President Biden has to say about Hurricane Ian and really the shocking statistic about the storm's impact on Florida.
News Channel 8 Sports is sponsored by the Tampa Bay Area Volkswagen dealers.